And we have James Gleason, so, and Huntley, and Dave Mason, Dave Mateski. Who are we missing? Huntley's
That's it.
here. Okay. Well, I think our first order of business is to elect a new chairman, as I think everybody knows. So I'm going to suggest we nominate and approve somebody.
Nominate James Gleason.
I'd like to nominate James Gleason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
Second.
I seconded it.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of running a meeting. So all in favor?
I guess we
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
And
Aye.
okay, aye. So I think that's unanimous. Next thing is we need to, as we talked about earlier, we need to kind of revise the forms on the website to the most current forms. I'm glad to do that if people are okay with me having the office delete the older forms, and I'll upload the most current.
Okay.
Where are the forms coming from, Frank?
From the
Where are
state,
they coming?
the Office of Planning at the state. The same people that published the ZBA handbook. In fact, it's in the appendix to the ZBA handbook. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess could I have a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved.
And a vote.
Okay,
All in
second.
favor? Fine.
Aye.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries.
What is the matter with this thing?
You seem to be delayed, Dave.
Which Dave?
I must be.
Mason. Dave Mason.
Just
Dave Mason's about 5 seconds behind, three
This one.
seconds
one.
behind. We'll just, I'm not sure what to do other than we'll just be patient with Dave's comments. That might be,
There's nothing. You can't do anything.
okay. With all of that, I think it makes sense to reopen the hearing on the variance that we've gone through. And everybody on the ZBA knows that I've gotten new language or proposed language from our council, which I'll read it for the record. Short-term rentals as defined in the town zoning ordinance should not be permitted on these lots. This restriction shall be contained in any and all deeds to the subject lots from the current owners, applicants, the two subsequent purchasers. This restriction should also be made a note on the subdivision plat to be recorded in the Carroll County Register of Deeds if the owners applicants receive Jackson Planning Board subdivision approval following the granting of this variance. So we do have a motion on the table from James Gleason, seconded by Dave Mason, that the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished provided there is a condition to approval, to the approval concerning the prohibition of short-term rentals, as I just stated. So I think we should, I suggest we, unless there's more discussion on that, we should vote. I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
And the second?
Second.
Okay, Dave Mason seconds.
Second.
Great. And all in favor? Right.
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Okay. I think that also, am I correct? That also, everybody voted yes on that?
Even the dog.
Okay.
Is it possible to ask a question on that?
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Victor Allen.
To
You know what it is that you came in scrambled and I didn't catch the whole.
Well, it will be in the minutes and our decision. But you know, we basically approved the criteria that the value of properties would not be diminished, provided that we impose the condition banning short-term rentals on both properties.
So it's proved that you will ban them?
Well, we
That's
haven't
right.
approved the variance yet, Victor.
Oh, okay.
So why don't
Okay.
you, and really this, at this point, this should just be discussion among the ZBA
Okay.
members. Okay, the next criteria, the fifth criteria is a criterion, I should say, is that we should find that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision, and that the specific application of this provision to the property, there's no fair and substantial relationship between those two things, and that the proposed use is a reasonable one. In my mind, what we're really looking at is the requirements for we are in effect with this not requiring a 60-foot right-of-way and a 18 to 20-foot traveled way on what is now the driveway, and we're agreeing that a 10 to 12-foot driveway is adequate. And in my mind, imposing the additional requirement of a right-of-way and a driveway width almost twice what is required for a normal driveway brings no benefit to the town. So I think, to me, this is a fairly, I find it, this is something I can support without much issue, but there may be some more discussion on that. So why don't I be quiet for a second and let others talk?
I don't have any problem. I've been up to the site, and it doesn't really seem like there's any problem with it. I don't think there's any deficit to the town.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nope.
Then I'd entertain.
I would, hello?
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
It's coming in. It will come in. It will come in eventually. I agree in that the property could have two residences on it without any variance, and so this particular regulation on this particular piece of property. If there were going to be multiple lots up there and it was a subdivision, that would be a different situation. But it's going to be basically what the owner could do without any variance as far as the amount of traffic and the residences and so forth. So I would support your position on that.
And, to further, Dave, should they wish to further subdivide into, let's say, 3 lots, assuming that might be possible, at that point, it'd be clear that that there would need to be a private road to accommodate that at the width, at the normal width, which I think is a 60-foot right-of-way. So
That's
Okay.
something-
I
something
would
future.
agree. I agree.
Okay, might entertain then a motion to find that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of this ordinance provision and a specific application of that provision to this property, as we discussed.
So moved.
Okay, that's moved by me, seconded by Dave Mason,
Yep.
with
Aye.
all the echoes.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Aye.
And then finally, and I think I may have highlighted some of this to people. Ever since our first meeting, I've had some concerns about what we did in approving actually the first three criteria. The variance being not contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the ordinance being observed, and also the substantial justice criterion. I think we all concluded that any benefit of a private road, any benefits of a private road with a 60-foot right-of-way and a minimum 18-foot road surface to the town in this particular instance is minimal or non-existent.
Non-existent.
Non-existent. So I supported that. But, in reaching that decision 2 weeks ago, I don't think I fully considered the other aspects of the driveway and road standards and the extent to which the existing driveway may be required to be upgraded to current driveway standards. And in part, this has been, I'm cognizant of this in part because of my recent experience in applying for a driveway permit for my property and going through those standards for the driveway I hope to build. So I now believe that I could support granting the variance only if we impose another condition that required the existing driveway from Thornhill Road to the new driveway, to the new lot, be upgraded to current standards for a driveway. Most of the standards for a for a town road, private road, and a driveway are similar or the same. I can read, I guess I should read through what I'm proposing, and then we can discuss it.
Yep.
So, to meet the criteria of not being contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance being preserved, and that there is no substantial undue hardship, this variance is further conditioned on requiring the following. Given the increased traffic on the existing driveway must be upgraded to current driveway standards between Thornhill Road and 20 feet beyond the location of the driveway to the new lot. The 20-foot extension I'm intending here anticipates that the intersection of the old driveway and the new driveway will be used as a T to allow heating oil and other trucks to back down the driveway to the new lot. I think there needs to be a deeded acknowledgement limiting town liability, given the characteristics of the remaining portion of the driveway to the existing house. That needs to be recorded. A note that, and I think this was discussed briefly in the meeting last week, the stopping site distances for the old driveway entering Thornhill Road should be at least 205 feet looking downhill, northwest, and giving the higher speeds 250 feet uphill to the southeast should be imposed. In saying this, I recognize that this may require significant excavation along the town right-of-way and the Cram property and possibly the Allen property, along with the removal of a very large boulder and a large tree to achieve that necessary sightline. And continuing would also say that the center line of the turnoff from the existing driveway to the new driveway must be at least 75 feet from the center line of Thornhill Road. It must be a 90-degree angle. And then there should be a 20-foot platform with no more 3% downslope grade from Thornhill Road is required at the point where the existing driveway enters Thornhill Road. And the driveway to the new lot must intersect the existing driveway where the existing driveway has a grade of no less than 6%. I also recognize in stating this that is probably going to require some fill, or will require some fill, as at least by looking at the contours on the subdivision plat submitted last year to the town. It looks like to me that the grade on the existing driveway probably approaches 10%, if not a little bit more in some places. And then continuing, I'd say all of the standards are required to be met, including general road characteristics, geometric standards, drainage, erosion control, utilities, and construction standards. And then also that the driveway to new lot must meet the current driveway standards in all respects. And then I'd add any proposed subdivision plat must show the design of the reconstruction of the existing driveway as detailed in the subdivision regulations as if it were a private road. I'd go on and say the waiver requires the location of the reconstructed driveway to be essentially the same as the current driveway, because I believe a separate driveway to a new lot should not be permitted, as it would introduce too many curb cuts in the 230-foot distance on Thornhill Road.
Yep.
And then in complying with these requirements, the existing driveway from the existing dwelling to the intersection with the new driveway cannot be changed in a way to bring that portion of the old driveway further out of compliance with the current driveway standards. And then finally, recognizing that the ZBA is no expert on this, that any aspect of that entire condition I just read out may be waived or relaxed by the selectman acting through the road agent. And that further, any condition to approval of this variance is not intended to limit the ability of the selectman, the road agent, or the planning board to impose additional requirements for more stringent requirements than those cited above. So I'm glad I circulated this earlier, so you have a chance to read it. It's way too long, but I think it's all necessary. I also want to point out that I really started thinking about this almost immediately after our meeting on September 30th. And the email that the board received from the building inspector, which came about a week ago, was, I guess, serendipitous, but I was kind of already there and concerned. So I just want to make sure that I'm suggesting this not in reaction to that email, but from something I've been thinking about since September 30th. So that's my motion. And as I said, I think this is required for me to be able to vote in favor of the variance. And I guess I'll leave it open for discussion for anybody on the board.
I agree. Go ahead.
Dave, you have the floor, I think. Matesky.
Yes, I agree completely. And like you, Frank, I thought about now what triggered my thinking was the receipt of the email from the building inspector. And I think that I arrived at the same conclusion you did, that we needed to beef up a little bit on, I think I personally didn't have the full scope in mind when we went through that, but now I agree 100%. I think to make this thing work properly, we need to recognize the site distance problem and include that in any variance that we grant.
And and I think do that, but then recognize that these are the selectmen's road standards, and
Right.
if the selectman and the road agent, acting through the road agent, want to relax any portion of that, well, that's fine. But this is the ZBA's marker.
Right. Right.
Well,
Right.
I think the way you put this forward has made it clear that the road agent, the selectmen, have the ability to modify. So I think that makes sense. I think the things you put forward make sense, and giving the people on the ground, so to speak, the ability to modify to make it reasonable and achievable, that makes sense.
Well, hearing nothing else, I'd like to move my motion, which is that we adopt as a condition to approval the what I just read.
Yes.
Beginning with that this variance is further conditioned on the requiring the following, and then I go through
Yeah.
12 paragraphs. So I've moved it.
Second.
Who said that's Dave Metesky?
Yes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
I hear nobody approved other than a late yay from Dave Mason. Okay. And before we vote on the variance, with your consent, I'd like to kind of bring this issue to the planning board, partially to explain what we did, but mostly to highlight what I think is a gap in our subdivision checklist in looking at this particular issue. I think it's only fair given what they will have to go through next. So is that okay with people?
That's fine with me. I ran into Bill Terry the other day, and he.
Andy Fisher.
Hello. Go ahead.
Andy Fisher has a question.
Yeah, I do. I guess I don't mean to be stepping in if this isn't the time for for anyone not on the board to chime in. But
this portion of the meeting is ours to discuss and then approve or disapprove the variance. I'll give you a chance at the end before we sign off. Okay, so we have gone through all of the criteria, improved them with two conditions.
Yep.
So I would entertain a motion to.
I don't think we voted on. We did not vote on the first condition.
Yes, we did.
We didn't vote on it. Did we?
Yeah, the first condition
Is a subdivision.
that
Was the short-term rental.
no, the first are you talking about the first criteria to that this is not contrary to public interest, or you're talking about adding the prohibition of short-term rentals?
No, I'm talking about adding the exactly. I don't think we voted.
Yeah, we at our September 30th meeting, we had a vote that the surrounding properties would not be diminished, and that lost by a 1-4 vote. And then today, the motion that I made, well, essentially, I guess I effectively amended the motion on the value of surrounding properties, because I said that the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished, provided that there is a condition to the approval that relates to the prohibition of short-term rentals in the following form. That, according to my notes, is what we approved earlier today.
And the form was part of your motion?
It was part of the motion I read, yes. If there's any uncertainty, we can vote it.
Okay.
And
we voted on that.
We voted on that.
Yes.
So we voted on the first condition.
It's just me.
Go ahead. Nope, not coming.
We did not separately vote on the condition. We voted on a combined motion that the value of the properties would not be diminished provided there is a condition as follows.
That was the vote we took earlier.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So just for the record, we've gone through all 4 issues that we're supposed to discuss.
All
right?
5 issues.
All 5.
All
right?
5
Okay. And we've all 5 have passed
with
Correct.
conditions.
with conditions. Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to make my notes here. So and we can impose these conditions we talked about. So in finality, we can say that based on all 5 issues passing, we are granting.
No, James,
Yeah.
we have to separately vote
Oh, okay.
to
Sorry.
grant the variance.
Okay.
And it's a simple motion, which
Okay.
I guess I'll move. I move that we grant the variance
Mhm.
As requested, subject to the 2 conditions,
Mhm.
the short-term rental one and the road standards that we also approved. So I've made that motion.
I will second it.
So Dave Matesky seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay. And then just for housekeeping, as you know, I already wrote up half the minutes. I'm glad to finish up the minutes with today's meeting since I have the recording. And then and write a decision, if that's okay with you all, James, you specifically, but everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think that is basically the end of our
And you're going to
business.
Frank, you're going to get together with the planning board to go over this?
I'm going to sit down with planning board. Number one, explain, because I think they deserve to hear that
Yes.
from us, why we gave a variance from the frontage, which I understand is very unusual. And then second, also talk a little bit about, or kind of point out what, at least to me, is a gap in the subdivision checklist.
Yeah.
In terms of how they look at and review existing roads and driveways.
Yeah, because this could come up again and again if we're not careful.
And I guess what I'm really getting at is it doesn't make sense, or it may not make sense for the planning board to approve a subdivision if in approving it, there are substantial deficiencies in the road or driveways, and might they want to somehow take that into account? in the
Yeah.
subdivision. And Andy, I see you raising your hand. So I will be talking to the planning board to answer your question. And Andy, you're as well as everybody else, I think we're pretty much at the end of the meeting. So feel free to comment or ask questions if you wish.
You'll have to
Uh,
unmute him.
Yep, no, I'm unmuted if people can hear me. So I guess I've got, I have quite a number of issues with this whole process, which I won't go into all of them now. One, it sounded like were there discussions amongst the board outside of a public meeting?
There were not.
No.
Not, okay, so
No.
it sounded like there were, but that's okay.
So,
So, one, I guess I would like it to be noted in the minutes that this meeting happened and the rest of the votes that happened were, it was all processed without agent or applicant being allowed to speak on any of the matters. And it sounded like that you went back on one of the aspects of the application that you voted on the first night and approved, and then you went back on that tonight and added conditions to something that you had already approved without conditions. Is that what happened?
That is what happened.
Okay. Is that a proper procedure?
Yes.
That is. Okay. That seems not that way to me, but I guess I just want these things clear. And will you be advising the planning board as an agent of the ZBA or just as a concerned citizen of Jackson, or what?
I will be advising. I think inevitably I'm going to be seen as a member of the planning board. I'm sorry, a member of the ZBA. And since it was a unanimous vote on this matter, I can provide my own take, but I certainly can say this represents the result represents the unanimous view of the Board of Adjustment. And not to color not attempting to color in any way any future subdivision application from Mr. Cramp, but really to explain to the planning board why we were willing to take this, what I've heard described as a very unusual, if not unprecedented step regarding frontage.
Did you hear that as part of any of these meetings?
No, just
Okay.
going into the post office. Yeah.
Okay, but that's not nobody that actually took part in any of these meetings.
No. And number two, that in going through this, it seems to me at least that there may be a gap in our subdivision process in addressing the nature of any existing roads and driveways in any proposed subdivision.
I
And that's just my perception. I've spent some time on the planning board. I'm not suggesting that planning board do something. I'm just identifying what, to at least me, and perhaps not the entire ZBA, but at least me, that seems to me to be a gap, or at least something they need to be aware of. And again, to the point that it doesn't make sense to me for a subdivision to be approved, and then without really any regard to any deficiencies in the roads or driveways, and then leaving it entirely that exists, or as well as, or as any difficulty in any proposed driveways, and then leaving it to the road agent to try to remedy or address as best he can. I think it's just better that any deficiencies be known ahead of time, and the planning board in their wisdom can, address those or not address those.
My experience before the planning board has been that they have taken those things into account, but that we may just have different experiences.
Well,
but one of my questions would be: was that a question that was actually before this board? Was that part of the application that was before this board?
the application submitted to the planning board?
No, it wasn't
this-
part
this-
of the
this-
application.
There was nothing in the, I guess, pointing to the Cramp subdivision
But
application
that's not what
last year.
that's not what's before this board, though.
No,
Right.
not at all. But we're certainly aware of it, and we looked at that because that's what you were appealing. Basically, is that denial.
Certainly, but
and-
not because of the
Yes,
the
but-
quality of the driveway.
Yeah, but I don't think. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think the
Hey,
planning board.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Andy Fisher, when you presented this to the planning board and you presented it to us, did you make note of the fact that there was a problem with the sight lines in the driveway and so forth?
To my recollection, sightlines did not come up in the conversation at the planning board. That was not why the
Well,
why
you're
the
the
application goes through.
surveyor.
yes.
No, we understand that, to recognize that that was a problem. Did you just
It's
didn't present it
an existing
because
driveway. The
you
driveway
thought it
exists.
might be a problem and you didn't want to present it?
I never thought that. I never
Yes,
said that.
but
Please,
you
please
want
do
to
not.
have a
No.
second lot on there.
No. You're making an accusation there. Please don't do that. That's not. That's.
Well,
no
I-
basis in
what
it.
did you
Dave,
want?
Dave, I think
What did you want to?
the issue, Dave, is that the current subdivision checklist and subdivision application requirements don't appear to call out or require the identification of any deficiencies in the roads that or driveways that exist in that subdivision at the time of the application. And, that's, many of the driveways and roads in Jackson don't comply with the current standards, and that's something the road agent has to deal with every day. But it just seems to me that, so I don't think, Andy Fisher, the subdivision application and plat seemed to me to comply with everything that the planning board requested and specified had to be on the plat. I guess what I'm saying is, I think if I were still on the planning board, I'd like to know that there's deficiency in that, certainly in the sight line, if not some of the other things. Now, what the planning board does with that, I haven't gone that far.
And I don't mean I should step back. And I don't mean to. I apologize if I were sounded like I was attacking you on that. I didn't mean it to be like that. And if when our application was before the planning board that had come up, we would have addressed it. It didn't come up. It's an existing driveway. If the planning board had suggested that yes, this would be fine as long as the driveway was upgraded, then that's it was that just didn't come, that wasn't ever part of the discussion. So it wasn't anything that we addressed or avoided. It just didn't come up.
And I guess I'm suggesting that perhaps it should be, or at least the planning board should consider whether or not they want to make sure they tick that box when they're looking at everything in a subdivision app.
Isn't it, Frank? I sort of put it in the category of, in a way, it's like setback requirements and stuff where it becomes more non-conforming in a way. In a sense, you've got a driveway that's non-conforming, and by putting a second, by subdividing that lot and putting a second home in there, in a sense, maybe not legally, but practically, you're making it more non-conforming because now you got more traffic coming out in the same non-conforming driveway.
Well, in theory, our road standards require an upgrade if there's any increase in traffic.
Yeah.
But I guess the point I'm making is if that isn't addressed or at least thought about before the subdivision is actually approved, you end up with having the poor road agent trying to kind of put the horse back in the barn.
Agree.
Or somehow ameliorate it. Whereas, maybe during the preliminary discussion on the subdivision, there could have been other changes made to partially ameliorate the problem.
Right.
And likewise,
I'm going to have to interrupt. I just need to make a point here.
Go ahead, Andy.
You're not recognizing me. So I'm just going to interrupt and tell you this. This has nothing to do with the decisions that you've already made. I just want to clarify that I have met on the same morning. I met with Kevin Bennett and Pat Kelly. And I'm not sure if it was prior to my first planning board meeting. It was certainly prior to the ZBA meeting, long before that we even applied for the variance. But I met with both Kevin and Pat on the property, and we looked at sightline, and it didn't come up. So where you are saying that maybe we were trying, I kind of get the impression you're thinking we're trying to hide something.
No.
Please let me finish.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I just want to be clear that I met with those two gentlemen, and neither expressed a problem. That's all.
No, and please, I was not suggesting that either you or Amanuense Survey was somehow hiding something. I think it's more. This is more, I think, a discussion.
I think the discussion is fair. I think the discussion is fair, but I just wanted to let you know that I was under the impression it wasn't going to be a problem with those two gentlemen. In fact, we discussed various sites that a driveway could be, and they just didn't seem to be an issue. That's just all. That's all.
I mean, in the end, if you're successful.
I understand what it is. I understand. I'm totally understanding of that.
And thank you. I'm again not. We are where we are.
Yeah.
Anything else, or should we? Yes, Huntley.
After the last meeting, I did stop to talk to our building inspector, and he might have found this after he talked to Andy, but he showed me the paperwork that showed that they needed 200 feet, and he went up to actually measure it. And like he said, like all the roads in Jackson, people drive too fast, and he almost got right into pulling out of the driveway. So he did have concerns about it. It was probably after he talked to Andy, though, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate it came up this late in the process, but it did.
Yep.
Well, since we've been at this for 45 minutes, which I guess is a record, I suggest we adjourn, and I'll write up the minutes and decision and share them with everybody to review before I post them, or send them to the town
Second.
post. All in
I
favor?
second the motion to adjourn.
Okay, that was my motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I
Dave's eye always comes in as if it were a no. Okay, thank you all. Sorry for the having to go through 3 versions of this meeting, but we
did it.
were able to conclude it. Thank you for your help, everybody.
You may say leave meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time and all your consideration.